Where do you go if you have a complaint or a concern about the police response in your neighborhood? If you witness a questionable act by a San Diego police officer, what recourse do you have? I'm Jack Bloom. To answer these questions and discuss civilian oversight of law enforcement, our guests today include, from the Citizens Review Board on Police Practices, Executive Director Scott Ferguson and Board Chair Riley Gordon. Joining us also is San Diego's Chief of Police, William Lanscombe. Welcome, guests. Nice to see all of you.
Nice to be here.
Nice to be
Scott,
here.
First question I'd like to ask you is, what is the Citizen Review Board and how did it start in San Diego?
The Citizens Review Board, Jack, is a group of 23 citizens appointed by the mayor to review and evaluate police department investigations of citizen complaints against police officers. It also reviews shooting investigations and the investigations into deaths in custody. The board began in San Diego in 1988 with the passage of Proposition G by the voters.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get onto the Citizens Review Board?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be a charter member of the board. I was appointed by then Mayor O'Connor. Mm-hmm. And about 5 or 6 years later, then City Manager Jack McGrory asked me if I'd come on as Executive Director of the board. So I've been there for most of the history of the board.
Mm-hmm. Riley, what are your qualifications to review and judge what officers do out in the field?
Well, as far as board members are concerned, we look for people that are objective, that are fair-minded, that are articulate, that have good research skills and good analytical skills. And our main objective is to find people that do have that objectivity and are able to look at particular cases in an objective and fair manner that treats both sides, the police department and the citizen, in a fair manner.
Mm-hmm. How long do you remain on that board?
Well, what was previously the city manager and now will be the mayor appoints people on an annual basis, and an individual can serve on the board for a maximum of 8 years.
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that you make a pretty good check on these members who serve on the board.
Oh, we do a very extensive background check through the police department, and citizens that are interested in being on the board may send a letter of interest to Scott mm-hmm. at his office, and we have a group of board members and community people who interview these candidates, and then mm-hmm. we make a recommendation based upon those mm-hmm. interviews.
Mm-hmm. And Scott, how do you educate the public on the Citizen Complaint Board?
We do most of our public education through our Community Outreach Committee, Jack. Mm-hmm. We respond to requests from groups throughout the city to come and speak with groups to talk to them about the board. Mm-hmm. We respond to questions from citizens that come up from time to time, and we encourage the public to attend our monthly open public meetings, mm-hmm. which are held on the fourth Tuesday of each month at 6:30 in the early evening at the Point Loma Library.
Mm-hmm. Ronnie, what is the training and how long is this training in order to develop the competency of these people who serve on the board?
Well, what we haven't got to yet, but we will, is that we have a prospective list of members. You don't come on the board uh-huh. automatically as a result of being recommended mm-hmm. by the selection committee. And that prospective list is subjected to an extensive training program, mm-hmm. both on the law and police policy. They are invited to attend classes at the police academy. And through that whole process, they become very familiar with police work, including going on ride-alongs with patrol officers, sergeants, and field lieutenants, and engaging in other police activities like they could go in ABLE in the police helicopter, special events, gang suppression teams, and that kind of thing. And through that whole process, they then become attuned to what police work is all about. So by the time there is an opening on the board, they are ready.
Now that they've trained extensively, how long do they serve?
On the board
Yeah,
itself?
yes.
Well, as we said, they can serve for up to 8 years with an annual appointment each year.
Hmm. Is it, if when they go off the board, can they, after that 8-year period, is there a possibility of them after say a lapse of some sort to come back onto the board again to cash in on that wonderful experience that they've developed all those years?
Well, normally not, although many of them go off to other various kinds of police activities, and they might, for instance, join the RSVP, which is the volunteer patrol unit. Some of our people have done that and engage in other kinds of tangential police activities.
Chief, I'd like to ask you, how does the CRB impact the police department concerning training and so on and policies?
It's a very large influence on the police department and certainly has, over the years, made us far more professional than we would have been without the existence of the CRB board. It's a group of community members who are courageous to sit on the board and to work very well together with the police department and the investigators to come up with an independent finding on the policies and procedures, whether we follow them, and then makes recommendations for training. Many of the policies that exist in the San Diego Police Department today are a direct result of the work that the CRB board does in the use of deadly force, in the policies and procedures in profiling that have been prevalent throughout the country. Those changes have made tremendous difference for the organization, and I don't believe that any department should exist without some form of civilian oversight. This happens to be the best.
Mm-hmm. Is there a companion to this in the area that you came from in the San Francisco area?
There are. I've been very fortunate to work in 2 other police departments. One, the San Jose Police Department, and the other is the Richmond, California Police Department. Both of them have different forms of civilian oversight. But my experience in this business, it's in 40 years of experience, I believe that the San Diego Police Department, the CRB board, is the most effective of the processes that I have seen. And it's because it's such a large group of community that are representative of the entire city of San Diego that have real opportunity to change the way we do business in this police department.
Mm-hmm. Scott, what is the composition of the board here in San Diego?
We attempt, Jack, to have the board reflect the community that they serve. So we look for gender parity. We recruit people from every community of the city, every minority group in the city. We want people of various educational levels, various different types of incomes. We look for diversity. The board is served best by a strong, diverse group. We must guard against any kind of groupthink. You don't want everybody with the same opinion. You don't want everybody with the same background. So diversity is really what we're looking for in recruitment.
Mm-hmm. Could you describe the process of the board?
Process of the board itself is fairly straightforward but multifaceted. When Internal Affairs finishes the investigation of a citizen's complaint, a Category 1 complaint, that complaint investigation is forwarded to a 3-person review team. The board, as we said, has 23 members. 21 of them serve on 7 3-person review teams. And then the chair and the first vice chair have other duties and can sit on review teams if it's a complicated case and we need an extra set of eyes. But once that case is turned over to the review team, they thoroughly evaluate the work of Internal Affairs, and they see the entire investigative package. They see every report that's been generated. They have the audio tapes of witness interviews, any videotapes that have been recorded. They have photographs of incidents. They have all of the statements of witnesses, witness officers, and the complainant. So they see the entire package. They'll do a read-through of that investigative package, and at that point they'll probably have questions. So they make a list of their questions, and those questions are referred back to the investigator at Internal Affairs, who is then responsible for getting the information that the board members need. And that process can go on as many times as is necessary until the board members feel that they either need a face-to-face meeting with the investigator or they're ready to proceed with the investigation. So oftentimes they'll have disagreements with the findings or questions about the findings, and they'll actually sit down with the investigating sergeant and usually the internal affairs lieutenant to get their questions asked. That process goes on as long as it takes until everybody's on the same page. It's possible for the review team to disagree with the internal affairs findings, but the process as it's worked out over the years is such that usually disagreements are worked out at that level. Sometimes the police department will change their mind and change their findings. Other times they'll convince the board that it's the correct findings in the first place. Once that all is completed, then the review team writes a report, presents the case to the full board at one of the two monthly closed case review sessions that the board conducts. And they will ask the board to either agree or to disagree with their findings. So the full board will discuss the case. There are always a lot of questions. The police department is present in those meetings, the internal affairs lieutenant, plus other members from internal affairs. Chief Lansdowne is often at those meetings. If he's not there, Executive Assistant Chief Bill Mayhew is at the meetings. And we have a long dialogue on these cases. When the discussion is complete, the board takes a vote. And they vote to either sustain internal affairs findings or to not sustain the findings. As I said, in most cases, because we have this long working process, the findings are sustained. If they're not, then it goes to, in the past, it's gone to the city manager, and the city manager will make a decision either to sustain the police department or the review board. With the change in city government form, that will be the responsibility of either the mayor or his chief operating officer.
Ronnie, what do you look at a officer shooting? What comes into the fold at that time?
When we look at an officer shooting, we want to look at two or three things. One is whether or not the policy and the law was followed with regard to the patrol officer, and whether the officer or whoever was involved in the shooting did everything possible to protect the safety of the public surrounding that circumstance and the officer himself or herself. We also want to see if there is anything that can be learned from what happened in that particular incident, where we might suggest some things that need to be looked at to the department, or we may feel that everything that the officer did was perfectly proper and that there is nothing that can be gained from it. One of the things that we do have an advantage in is that we can look at the work of the shooting review board, which also, among other facets of the department, reviews these shootings. And we have an opportunity to look at that as well as the district attorney's report and the report of the homicide unit, and have all of those materials available to us so that we can make policy recommendations if we feel it's appropriate.
In that connection, Chief, you know, the news media, they grab onto something and they milk it to death, particularly when there's an officer shooting. How does the police respond to this image that the media seems to derive such pleasure out of?
We respond to it by giving as much information as we possibly can to the community and certainly to the media so they can get the right information out and allow the public to understand what we do. But we're unique in San Diego, where we have so many different reviews in an officer-involved shooting. The police department responds, the district attorney sends their investigators that go along with us. We have a separate internal affairs function that goes with them, so all three do separate investigations. And then we have this response that we give to our CRB board that reviews it. It's the community of San Diego that is always the final judge in a case like this, so that we can make sure that we're being professional and that we're using deadly force as a last resort. We have been very fortunate in using the information we've gained from CRB to craft and create a training program specifically designed to prevent the use of force. That class has been attended by members of the CRB board, and their suggestions and their help in changing some of our policies has been instrumental in seeing the decline in police officer shootings here in San Diego.
You know, sometimes I think that there's an adversarial position. I know this has occurred in the past between the police and the review board. How do you handle that situation between the board and the police department to sort of diffuse any particular adversarial position that may occur, if that does in effect happen?
Well, I can tell you on the part of the police department, certainly, the review board is absolutely independent. They take all the information that's presented and they come up with their own conclusions, their own findings, and their own recommendations. And if there is a disagreement, it goes to the city manager, who finally, or now it'll be the mayor's office, but they will make the final decision. So it's not the police department that has the final authority to change policy and procedure. It truly is. Working with the CRB board and certainly the mayor's office now, it is the public they represent that really makes the changes necessary to ensure that they have the highest quality law enforcement we can possibly get in the city of San Diego.
Mm-hmm. So things operate pretty smoothly in that respect, where there's any particular disagreement that's ironed out between perhaps maybe the executive director or perhaps maybe somebody who handles that complaint form. If there's a huge complaint against the police department for, let's say, non-cooperation.
The working relationship is exceptional, but when I say that is we have professional disagreements sometimes. I think that's why the board was made and created, and that decision goes to the mayor's office now to be the final authority to make the decisions on what we're going to do. There's no ill feelings, it's business when we do this.
So actually you really complement one another for a mutual agreement of what occurs actually. How do you file a complaint for your board on that? How do you how does a citizen file a complaint against the police department?
I'd like to add something to what the chief said first. I think that we have a great communication structure with the department, and as the chief said, we get along very well, and even if we have a dispute, and it's the old story of we can disagree without being disagreeable, and we do that on a regular basis. The chief, I think, was very gracious to come to, I've said this to many people, to come to our meeting his second day on the job, which shows his support, I think, of the way we do business. And we are very appreciative of the relationship that we have with the chief and with the department. As far as filing a complaint is concerned, a citizen can go to any police department, police command, or storefront, or wherever the police structure is, and file a complaint. They can also file a complaint in Scott's office with the Office of Internal Affairs, and various community organizations that we relate to where they can go and file a complaint.
Is there a time frame involved between the time that you file a complaint and by the time it's answerable?
There is no time frame. I think purposefully it's important from our perspective, and as far as the department is concerned, I think, that people can file a complaint and be assured that there will be a review of it, even if there is a time frame that has gone by that would seem to some people to be unusual. It's still an obligation on the department's part and on our part to review it to the fullest extent possible.
Chief, do you want to answer that also?
I did want to comment on that. San Diego is the only police department that I'm aware of in the nation that has no limitation on when an individual can file a complaint. If it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, the department's position has been they want to look at it. They want to conduct that investigation. And so the San Diego Police Department has been very staunch in insisting that they will not create a statute of limitations on when a citizen can file a complaint. Now, after a complaint has been filed, there are some time limitations that we start running up against. Internal Affairs endeavors to have their investigation completed within 90 days. They can't always do that. Some complaints are more complicated than others. But for the most part, they'll have their investigation completed within 90 days. Then it's turned over to the board, and we endeavor to have our review of the investigation completed in another 30 days. So hopefully within 120 days, the citizen will have some resolution on their complaint.
Have you had any occasion where some of these citizens are dissatisfied with what occurs and so far as their complaint, and how do you address that?
Periodically, not as often as you might think, but in situations where an individual believes that something untoward has happened and the investigation concludes that everything was done properly by the officers and the board agrees with that, people will periodically be unhappy with those results. Usually what that requires on our part is an explanation of police procedure and the complaint procedure itself. So once we send a letter to the complainant, we always invite them to give my office a call if they have questions. And in the vast majority of cases, we can answer those questions to the satisfaction of the public.
Chief, how does this process compare to other cities?
This process works extremely well, and it is actually becoming the model for the rest of the country as more and more cities across America are beginning to adopt it. And the reason being is, I think, is one, and I give this, the credit to Scott, is he actually created something that is unique, that is effective, and really has been the model for the rest of the country. It is being copied, which is the greatest way to really say that it works well, because they see what works in San Diego, they talk to the citizens in San Diego, the feedback, the reports are, yes, this is what we want, this is what you need.
What are the major advantages to the police department in having a civilian oversight?
I can answer first, and then certainly Riley and Scott can answer too. But the advantage for us is it gives the community, the citizens of San Diego, a different venue to talk to. It's not police officers that listens intently to what they're saying and has the power to make change, but it's a community itself that gets to do that. It is the best way to talk to a community and say, if you're not happy with our finding, you can talk to CRB and they can do an independent study of this.
Can you add to that, Riley?
I think it gives the city and citizens a different set of eyes to look at a particular problem. And many times, because the department looks at a situation through their policies and procedures, they have a certain vantage point. And we can come and look at it from a different vantage point and say, well, have you thought about A, B, and C with regard to this particular issue? And many times the department will say, well, you know, we never really thought of it that way. That's a good point. So to me, that's one of the great things, is that we look at it from a very different perspective, I think, than the department does.
Good. Can you add to that also, Scott?
Yeah. The process that we have was designed to be flexible. It was designed to be a process which could change and adapt and grow over time. And where we've gotten to today is 23 citizens who are independently appointed, who are not remunerated in any way, shape, or form, who have the opportunity to look into all of these matters. And they are trained to understand that they are not advocates for the police department. They are not advocates for the public. They're advocates for a fair, thorough, and completely adequate system of investigating and looking into citizen complaints. They're there to be fair witnesses to the process. And I believe that those 23 eyes add a great deal of value to the department and to the community. They're very well-trained people.
How can the community get more information concerning the review board, the Citizen Review Board? Where can they go for, or who can they ask, or just what would be the procedure?
The review board's number is 236-6296, and they can call that number with any question that they have. People can ask for brochures, they can ask for information packets, they can ask our community outreach team to come out and speak to groups or to public meetings. We make it as easy as possible for people to get information. We're also on the city's website, and there's also a link to the review board from the police department's website.
Do you encourage people to look into the Citizen Review Board and perhaps maybe participate? How do you encourage them once you get them, you get an inquiry.
Mhm.
Now you have a live one. What do you do with them?
I spent a lot of time recruiting, a lot of time talking with people, asking them to come in, sitting down at lunch with people, visiting them at their workplace. We spend a lot of time recruiting people because what we're looking for is only fairness. We want people who can fairly look at these matters that come before them and make it a fair determination based on the facts. So we spend an awful lot of time recruiting. So if anyone is interested, I'd love to have a call from them. We're more than happy to share information, and we'll really go into depth with people about what's expected, the time that people have to put in, which is a great deal of time. These are citizens that put in an average of 20 or 25 hours a month. Some of our people are retired, but most of them are working people, so they have to find that 20, 25, sometimes 30 hours a month away from work, family, and other activities.
What age and gender are you looking for?
As I said earlier, we look for gender parity, and that's always been difficult. For some reason, we have more men than women who apply for membership, so we're always recruiting heavily among women. And as regards age, 18 to the sky's the limit.
Do you find in your experiences that when you go out into the field, is this a better learning process to see exactly the working of the police department so that you know what pitfalls they're working and what tensions that they're under? Because I always think in terms of the police as being the front line, the infantry people who put their lives on the line all the time they go out. That badge is like a magnet to some people, and
It's true, it is.
and they're aware of this. And I'm sure when you fellas in your business go out on patrol, perhaps maybe you might jeopardize yourself in that direction.
Well, one of the things that we make very clear to people who are interested in the board is that every year we require 40 hours of additional training over and above the training that they've already had. We require at least one ride-along per year, and we suggest that members do a ride-along each quarter, because I think ride-alongs with police officers is one of the best training tools that we have. It's really impossible for a board member to judge these situations if they've not seen the officers in
We just
action in the
about
field.
run out of time, and